Well, how people are housed in federally funded homeless shelters could soon change. The Trump administration plans to repeal transgender protections put into place under then President Barack Obama, allowing shelters to house people based on the gender they were assigned at birth.
An update to the rules. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, has announced plans to revise rules that control how some homeless shelters provide services for transgender clients. The proposed changes mean, for example, that a federally funded women's shelter would be allowed to decline accommodations to a person who identifies as female but is a biological male. That also means a women's shelter could not turn away a person who identifies as a male but is a biological female. The 2012 Equal Access Rule mandated that shelters are open to all eligible individuals and families, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or marital status. Implemented by the Obama administration, it also offered guidance barring shelters from denying access to transgender people in accordance with their gender identity. But HUD has released plans to strike those guidelines that went into effect in 2016. HUD Secretary Ben Carson says the update will allow shelters to set their own policies that align with their missions, like protecting victims of domestic violence or human trafficking. A news release about the changes also said the modifications would better accommodate the religious beliefs of shelter providers. The planned shift in guidance was met with criticism from civil rights groups and LGBTQ advocates, saying it would be particularly dangerous for Black and brown transgender women who face significantly higher rates of unemployment and homelessness, especially during the current economic crisis.
Changes like these must first go through a period of public comment, but some LGBTQ organizations have already said that they intend to file a lawsuit over the change once a final proposal has been issued.